Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Serenity Engages Facebook Live. I am thrilled to be talking with Jill Vitale-Aussem today about Serenity as a value-added partner for the Eden Alternative. So stay tuned. We'll be right back in 20 seconds. Thanks for sticking with us. I am so excited to have my friend and someone that I greatly admire here with me today, Jill Vitale-Aussem. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Good to see
you again.
Yeah, I know we haven't seen each other in a little while. So today we're going to talk a little bit about Serenity and how it fits into the Eden Alternative. But first, I want to remind people who you are. So Jill is the CEO of the Eden Alternative, and I'll let her introduce herself. But I also want to show she's an author of a book that I can never get the camera right, Disrupting the Status Quo of Senior Living, a Mind Shift. Such an amazing book, and it was published in 2019, super relevant for what's happening, especially even today. And I noticed, Jill, one of the chapters towards the end was, sorry, I should have had it marked. Start at the top and then culture from the ground up. And I think those are things that align really, really well too with the Eden Alternative. Would you agree?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Yeah. So for those in our audience who don't know you, can you tell people who you are?
Sure. Jill Vitale-Aussem, and I have, over 20 years of experience leading communities. So I started out years ago as a nursing home administrator and have been the executive director of assisted living communities, life plan communities, and overseeing multiple multi-site operations. And for the past 2.5 years, I've had the great pleasure of leading the Eden Alternative, which is one of my favorite organizations in the world. And I'm actually making a move coming up, going back to the organization I left when I came to the Eden Alternative, going back to Christian Living Communities, which is a nonprofit, multi-site organization based in the Denver area. So really excited to keep doing this work, right? It doesn't mean I won't be doing this work toward person-directed cultures and focusing on well-being. It'll just be in a different way.
Yeah, and actually, I think that's really exciting because that puts you in a different position. You'll be the CEO of Christian Living Communities. And as you move into that, you'll be in a different position to actually implement some of the things that you've been leading here at Eden Alternative, yes?
Yes. And Christian Living Communities already has a great foundation of culture. So it's really taking it further, which is really exciting.
Yeah, very fun. So excited to talk to you today because Serenity applied to be an Eden Alternative Value Add Partner, and we were accepted. So we're very happy to announce that news that we are now part of the Eden Alternative Value Add Partner list, and you can find our information on their website. And I'd like to just talk with you a little bit about what was it that had Serenity align with the group of people that go through and review the value-added partners? Because it's not just a quick decision. You have a committee that goes through this, right?
Yes, we take this very seriously because the value-added partners are organizations that, first of all, are aligned with what we're doing and can bring value to the organizations that we work with. So we're very we go, as you know, the process is quite in depth, and we have a group of people on our team that looks, really digs into things and to see what an organization is all about. And I think I brought that up to you, Catherine, that you should consider it because I saw that the great synergy that we could have with you and how what Serenity does can help improve quality of life for residents, for team members, for family members. And when you start really supporting quality of life and well-being is what we frame it around, it also makes it improves well-being for leaders too, right? Because so many of the things that we struggle with have to do with communication, have to do with people feeling like they're out of the loop, especially during times like this. So anything that can bring people together, have them become well known to each other, increase that communication, make people feel like they belong, is so critical. And that's what we saw in Serenity.
Thank you for that. And you're right. You did bring it up to me, and I was so honored that you did. And I love what you just said about being well known to each other. And I know that's part of the Eden Alternative philosophy. The idea behind Serenity, one of the things we're seeing actually is that as Serenity gets implemented in communities, it opens this curtain of being able to see the caregivers who are providing the care on a daily basis to our loved ones that we don't usually get to see unless we're physically present.
Yeah.
And we don't even know them unless we're physically present and we work to develop a relationship.
Oh, absolutely. And especially right now, right? Where family members can't be there. To know who the people are that are working most closely with, who are partnering with your loved one, it matters so much. It matters so much.
Yeah, we had one really amazing story of a woman who wasn't very active in the community. She kind of stayed to herself. And with Serenity, one of the caregivers was able to take 2 pictures of her, one like this and one blowing a kiss. So it was like blowing a kiss. It was the action of it. And it was just so beautiful. And they posted it on Serenity and have given us permission to share it. And that's what I think about when I think about being well known to each other. Having the adult child be able to respond to something like that and see that and know that the caregiver was able to get her mom to do something like that was just invaluable.
Yes. Oh, so much.
So let's talk really quickly about the philosophy of the Eden Alternative and then maybe hit on the domains of well-being.
Absolutely. So the Eden Alternative, just so the audience knows, so we have been around for over 25 years, started back in upstate New York by a physician named Dr. Bill Thomas. And we have a mission of creating quality of life for elders and their care partners, no matter where elders may live. And what that really is it's about pushing back against the institutional framework of care, which really undermines any aspect of well-being that we have. And we can talk a little bit more about that. But we are last year we were in 19 different countries around the world.
Wow.
So a lot of impact, a lot of lives changed, and a lot more work to be done. The basic, what Dr. Bill Thomas saw all those years ago is what and for those of you who haven't seen it yet, we just launched a refreshed version of our Eden Alternative 10 Principles, which the intent is all still the same. It all still, 25 years later, which basically the research shows that all these things that were put in place all those years ago, they make sense, a lot of sense. So these refreshed principles are really just using language that's a little bit more relevant and contemporary. So the basic problem statement that's in our principles is that loneliness, helplessness, and boredom are painful and destructive to our health and well-being. And that doesn't just mean older adults, older people. Those same things, loneliness, helplessness, and boredom, impact all of us. They impact team members, they impact family members, they impact all of us, right? We've experienced, just living through this pandemic, we have experienced the pain of loneliness and helplessness and boredom. And the solution to that is creating caring, inclusive, vibrant communities where everyone, regardless of their age, regardless of what abilities we might be living with, can experience well-being. And the way we frame that at the Eden Alternative is called the Eden Alternative Domains of Well-being. And they were created a number of years ago by a group of experts, culture change leaders. And so what this is really all about, the domains of well-being are what we need to have a life worth living, basically, right? So it's identity, Do I feel? And so if you think about serenity in all of these things and the way that serenity can help support these domains of well-being, identity, am I well known, right? And that's for the elder, that's for the family member, that's for the team members, leadership, growth. Do I have the opportunity to learn new things? And that's one of the things that, ageism says, that whole view of everything, when you get older, everything's bad and you can't teach an old dog new tricks. We can all grow and learn. So that's key. Autonomy, right? Yeah. Do I have control over my own life? Do I have liberty? Do I have freedom? Security? And oh boy, have we had security be impacted during this pandemic, right?
Yeah.
And think about Serenity and and my parents, they live in a community, and they're both we're able to talk on the phone and things like that. But gosh, if I couldn't, and they weren't able to for whatever reason, I can't even begin to tell you how much that would help with my sense of security, knowing that they're okay and being in communication with people. And connectedness is the other big one that's been impacted right now. And that Serenity is so crucial to that, bringing people together using technology, which is what we need right now. Meaning. And you talk about, right, that photograph of the woman, the resident. I mean, just the meaning and knowing what's behind that, right? And that there is meaning in that woman's life.
Yeah.
And joy. We a lot of times, I think in our field, we try to go right to joy.
Yeah.
Oh, if I can make Catherine smile, I've done my job.
Yeah.
But real joy comes when the other domains are met. Yeah. Does that make sense? So right when we have purpose in our lives, when we're connected to other people, when we feel secure, when we feel like we're growing, we're well known. So it's an incredibly strong framework for supporting people, residents and team members, individuals living with dementia. This is a great framework for understanding what somebody's unmet needs are right now. It's one of the domains is not being met.
Yeah. And I saw that with my parents. My mom was in memory care. My dad was in assisted living. And they both passed last year, thank goodness. Before COVID, that would have been a much bigger challenge. So my heart goes out to anyone who's dealing with this during COVID. And the ideas that you talked about with security and having a meaningful life. I watched my dad sit down in the chair in his room just about from the day we moved him in, and he was there almost 4 years. He sat down and said to himself, you could watch it happen. I guess I'm old and I'm not going to go anywhere. This is my last place. So I'm just going to sit here and write it out. And it was very hard, very, very difficult. So I love this concept of, it's not just a concept. It's really the fact that it's been around 25 years or more, 27, I think you said. Mm-hmm. And that you just went through a refresh, and really all it was to bring the language up to date so that it feels more relevant and contemporary to people, but the purpose behind it has not changed at all. And I think that's really telling when something is that long lived.
Oh, yes, definitely. It's an incredibly strong foundation. And again, we just want more people to be able to relate to what we're doing. And, things need to be updated, just like technology changes. Yeah. Our language changes over time. And so it was time for a refresh.
Yeah. And so when you went through that refresh, how did you go about that? I'm curious, just the whole concept of, I know that this is a group effort. There's a lot of people involved in this.
Yes. And actually this whole process started 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago. And we embarked on a big identity project. And what we did is we worked with an organization, Varsity Branding. They worked with us on really looking at how do people see the Eden alternative, and so they interviewed people from all over the world. They interviewed people that loved us. Like, we've got raving fans.
Yes,
People
you
say,
do.
I bleed green. That's how much I love the Eden alternative. And then there are people that aren't raving fans, and not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. But it was important to hear from them, because some of the things that they said were, you talk around things sometimes. You use some fluffy language, and I can't relate to it. Or, gosh, the person that's in charge of allocating resources in my organization can't connect with the way you're putting things out there. And so that was a big aha moment for our organization and our board. That the foundation's incredibly strong, but it's how we were putting ourselves out there. So we worked with a huge group of people getting that input, and then we launched a new logo. We launched some new ways of putting ourselves out there, and then the principles were the not the final step in this whole thing, but the biggest thing, because I'll tell you, it was, these are sacred to people. And so to start tinkering with them was a little intimidating, and a little scary, and it was hard. And we had to spend a lot of time really looking at what is the intent behind this, and how can we maybe say it differently. Our founders, Dr. Bill and Jude Thomas, heartily endorsed these new principles, and they agreed that it was time for a refresh as well. So that felt really good.
And that makes sense. And what I love about it is it was very collaborative, but it was also investigative. Mm-hmm. And I think that speaks a lot to the Eden alternative as a whole, is really understanding, not shying away from the negative stuff, but looking at it, facing it, and saying, you know what, we can do better, we can do different. Let's look at this and let's hear it.
Yeah, because for every person that says, I can't relate to this, how many hundreds of team members and elders don't have the opportunity to experience the Eden alternative, right? If you think about like a CEO or a CFO who's like, this doesn't make sense to me, we're never going to get in there and be able to support them and help them create a well-being, support well-being for the people that live and work there. So in my mind, it's you have to, right? There was no, should we do this? It was like, we have to, because we have a big mission to change the world, and you have to update things in order to do that.
Yeah. And on that note, let's talk a little bit about timing in the world. So this was launched 27 years ago. A lot has happened in the world. You've written about a lot of that in your book. So given where we are in the world today, do you think that the timing has shifted, and that things are beginning to unlock in a way that they haven't been before?
I hope so. What we're seeing with the pandemic, right? This incredibly challenging, horrific time we've been through, and our field of aging services has been, really at the forefront of this. And so I do not want to minimize how challenging it's been. And aging services is in the spotlight, right? Mm-hmm. We're starting to see, oh my gosh, we have some broken things in our system that we need to address. We're really starting to see, and here's what's coming to the forefront, are all the things that improve well-being and quality of life, like smaller living environments.
Yes.
Like having consistent relationship-based staffing, like having your own private room, all of these things, empowering team members and residents. What we're seeing is those things are really good for infection control, and we've always known they're good for quality of life. So I do think this is the time, right? It's terrible right now.
Yep.
And it's how do we pick our heads up and look to the future as well, and what are we learning right now? Because there are lessons all around us, and the world, all of us now, a lot of the things you can draw parallels between what we've been experiencing during this pandemic and what an elder experiences in institutional care, right?
Yes.
Loneliness, helplessness. I'm bored. I mean, we can't stand it. So imagine living like that for the rest of your life, like so many older people do.
Exactly, exactly. And I know that at the beginning of the pandemic, there was some talk around that, like this, let's relate to this is how our older people in senior living are experiencing life every day. And then that conversation just kind of dropped off. And I think it's important to keep it to the forefront because they don't get the choice of, often they don't get the choice of being able to go out and eat at a restaurant on a patio where we can do that.
Yes.
So
yes, that's very true.
yeah, I think it's there's so much positive that can come from what we're dealing with in this challenge. And my hope is that Serenity and the Eden Alternative together are kind of a power partnership that help change this world. And that's what I'm about. It's what gets me up every day when I hear stories from family members. And I hear stories from family members saying things like, I am going to move my mom, dad, spouse out of this community because they don't tell me what's happening. I get this mass communication from them. I get emails that go to everybody. I get posts on their website. I might get a phone call that's like a robocall. That seems to be a thing right now. A lot of robocalls from senior living. And they're saying, you know, that's nice, but I want to know about my mom. I want to know about my dad.
Yes. Yes. So and even in the, you know, we've talked about this before, even not in a pandemic time, I've had family members say, you know, I hear from you guys whenever something bad happens.
Yes.
I see the phone number and I don't want to answer it because I know it means my mom fell or something went wrong. And what I know Serenity offers is the opportunity for communication. That's really around the person, right? And person-directed communication, person-centered communication.
Yeah.
And that can bring so much. You talk about the domain of security, right?
Yes.
That can bring so much peace to people. And I think we have really an obligation right now because we are going to see, and I think some, not everywhere, right? But we do see people taking mom or dad or husband or wife home when they're not equipped to support them.
Yeah.
So the more we can do to communicate, the better.
Yeah. And thank you for saying that, because that is one of the outcomes that could happen if you bring mom or dad home or spouse and you're not equipped. Then you're either spending a lot of money bringing someone in to help you, and then you're still risking COVID through that, or, you know, exposure. But you've also added stress that might be very unnecessary, not only in your own life, but in their life. It's very hard to make big shifts like that. You don't do it lightly.
Yes.
All right. Well, I want to share the quote from Dr. Bill Thomas, and I had it printed up on a little card that we are happy to send out to people, little Serenity Moments card. We have several of these with different quotes, but this is my favorite quote from Dr. Bill Thomas. Well-being is a much larger idea than either quality of life or customer satisfaction. It is based on a holistic understanding of human needs and capacities. Well-being is elusive, highly subjective, and the most valuable of all human possibilities. And that's the part that gets me every time, that last little bit. And that's the part that we want to value. And I think that that's what really makes me feel like this is a power partnership between us.
That's a great way to put it. Power partnership.
Thank you. Jill, thank you so much for being with me today. If people want to learn more about you, about the Eden Alternative, where would they find you?
EdenAlt.org. It's the best place to go.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for joining me. I look forward to our next conversation, because hopefully we'll have many more, whether here or on the Mavericks of Senior Living. Everyone who was here today, thank you for joining us. If you have any interest in what's happening at the Eden Alternative, I absolutely invite you to go check that out. They have a lot of good things. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me as well at www.serenityengage.com.